everybody to another YouTube Hangout. Super excited to be here. I have two special guests with me. We don't usually do this. I'm pumped to have two special guests at the same time. Erlend, who we've had on before, is the king of outsourcing, and Steve is the transform your business guru. Together they have created a book called 90 Days to Profit, and we're going to quickly touch on it and go over some of the points. Erlend and Steve, welcome aboard, guys.
Thanks, Evan. Nice to be here.
Thank you.
So what is the problem that most entrepreneurs go through that they're having these struggles? Like, you can have rapid turnaround in 90 days. What are you seeing as the major problems that entrepreneurs are facing at the start before they start working with you guys?
Good question. The majority of the businesses that I've dealt with are not necessarily startups or entrepreneurial, but there are a lot of similarities. In every business, I say this a lot, but in every business there are always 500 things to fix. On where they are in their life cycle, depending on what kind of problems they're facing. But the key to doing what I do is to find the one thing that needs to be fixed right now, and then finding the one thing that I need to fix it with right now and do that.
Got it. So how do entrepreneurs identify what the one thing is they need to fix? What I like to do, I speak to everyone in the business. There are two key elements to what what we do here. There has to be people, and there has to be a process. So if you've got those two things in a business, then you can apply the 7 steps formula. And what I like to do, I talk to people. Whenever I go into a business that needs help, whether it's a turnaround situation, a transformation situation, or it's positioning for growth. They've all, each of these things have got their own challenges, but I talk to people, and I talk to people across the length and breadth of the organization, and I get a view on what they think that that thing that needs to be fixed actually is. And depending on where you are in the organization and what your experience is, your view on what needs to be fixed will be different. But as you talk to enough people, themes will start to emerge. And very quickly, you can narrow it down to a handful of things that need to be looked at. And then once you get really into that, you can narrow it down to the one thing that needs to be fixed. So you talked about 7 steps. What are the 7 steps? What's the system that you guide people through? Come on, Evan. Come on, Erlend. You can jump in this one.
Well, it's the 7 steps to profit. So the first step is you identify the problems, and typically, as Steve said, you have a lot of problems, and yes, it is difficult to identify, but that's why you go through the next step, which is R for review. Okay, and when you review your problems, you kind of narrow it down again. Then you find the opportunities, and throughout this process, there will also be before you go from one step to the next step, there's going to be a hurdle. There's going to be a problem, and one of the problems is often getting everyone on board. So getting the whole team on board to actually follow through and agree upon what the one problem is. So that's something that is also important to know. So when you hit review and opportunities, there's going to be enablers and blockers. So an enabler is something that's going to make it possible to move forwards and solve the problem. And a blocker is obviously obstacles to actually getting there. After opportunities, you go to fine tune. This is where you get even closer into figuring out what to fix. Then we get to I, implement and test. T is for tracking. You test what you track what you test. And then the 7th step is to shape and roll it out all into the whole organization. So 7 steps in total. It spells out profits as an acronym. And that's the formula that Steve's used to make companies millions and millions of dollars, working with companies like BMW and Jaguar and Shell and Danone, Airbus. So he's spent more than 20 years in the industry of turning companies around, and this is the process that he's been able to distill into 7 steps.
Yeah, so that's great. Thank you for that. The process is, we call it the 7 steps to profit. Every step in the process is described by a letter, and those 7 letters spell out the words profits. Yeah, which is what Erlend's just
taking you through. So if for your listeners, the people that are interested in turning businesses around or transforming businesses, if they have that word profits in mind, and they can remember the word that goes with each of those letters, then they can follow the process. It's very easy for people to understand this. In fact, one of the keys to its success is that you can put this up on a screen or a chart, and people just get it in 30 seconds. That's it. Once they get it, they understand what it is, they can follow along, because once they get it, they can join the dots themselves. This isn't the sort of thing where you're bringing in a consultant who has to be the smartest guy in the room. This is working with people with a simple process that they can all understand, and they can all get behind it from day one.
And I guess all this is outlined in the book, right? I see it sitting there behind Erlend there in the background, that red cover. So most of my audience is going to be entrepreneurs, either people about to start a business or people who have already started a business. A lot of people may just be on their own or looking to start building a team. We're not talking about like BMW level size companies. What do you think is the most important part of the process for them to go through? Or what's one of the big takeaways they can learn from this to apply to a younger kind of company?
I as an entrepreneur myself, I kind of find that you can apply this process not only in your business but also your personal life to better identify what to do. So it is a step-by-step process to applying the Pareto principle, really, to figuring out what works and doing more of it, and or fixing the problem so that you can do more of something. So in my own company, we go through it to figure out how to make more money. So it doesn't really matter if you have a small business or a big business. It is the steps in the process. So as an entrepreneur, you're constantly, educating yourself, watching shows like this to actually consult yourself on your business, right? So you can use it on your own business for sure.
Cool. Maybe that'd be a good example, Erlend. Could you share how you've applied it to your company? Maybe a specific example or to your life. So for the entrepreneurs watching, they can say, yeah, I can relate to that.
Okay. So one of the problems for Mr. Outsource has been that we started offering virtual assistants to entrepreneurs, and although we sold a lot of courses, we didn't actually have a large amount of entrepreneurs retaining virtual assistants. So they would hire a VA, they would keep them for maybe 1 to 3 months, and then we would lose the client. And the reason I made a course was to educate people to basically learn how to do it. But what we've seen is people really struggle to delegate and utilize other people's time to make things happen. So we actually had to go through this process in terms of establishing a new target market for the business. And what we figured out is appointment setting for fast-moving consumer good companies in the wellness sector. I mean, sort of coconut water, healthy oils and creams for your face. So we do appointment setting for those kinds of companies, and that seems to work. And we went through the process in terms of establishing, what one single market we were going to target for Mr. Outsource.
Cool.
Yeah, I can give you an example also, Evan. Not a lot of people actually know this about me, but I actually have an auto accessories business, which is Amazon based. We've been running it now for about 3 years. There's only 5 people in the business, and this year we'll turn over 5.2 million. So it's doing okay, but there's only 5 people in the business, so it's not huge. It's very much in terms of feel, it feels like a startup. The process that we use is quite a well-established process for us, but we found that there were issues in terms of the products that we were selecting. They weren't all winners, not by any means. So we had to find a way of tackling that. Firstly, selecting better products, but then once we had found a winner, we then had to keep the product in stock because we source our products from China. So we use this process that I've developed over the years to actually tackle both of those problems, but we did them separately over a 6-month period and solved them both. We now have a different process. We can now spot winners more easily than we used to, and we've got a great stock control system. So we've actually tackled two very decent problems for us, but using this same process.
Awesome. So one of our live viewers, Steph, is writing in saying that she loves when we talk about marketing on the channel. Can you apply the process from a marketing perspective, maybe with an actual example or a fictional example, to kind of show how this can work to help improve somebody's marketing efforts?
Interesting. So the problem would be, how can I market my products better, right? So you write down the problems you're currently having with marketing, and then you review those, right? And then you find out which one of them has the best opportunities. Then you establish which one of these opportunities is probably the best one to do. Then you test it, right? And then you track the test. And then if it works, and if it doesn't work, you do another test, but then you test things until it works. And then you shape and roll out, which means that's when you invest a lot of money into, let's say a Facebook ad or whatever. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is applicable to marketing as well.
Yeah, marketing, like most things, is it's a process, and there are a number of steps in marketing, the same as there are in any business or any function in a business. And you can apply this same methodology to whatever process it is that you want to analyze and improve. If you take each of the steps in the process and you understand it, and you take out the messages that the data is telling you, there is always something to fix. And if you use this process well, you just follow. If you did nothing else but follow this process, at the end of this, you would have a better result.
Got it. J-Rai is another live viewer. He wants to know what's on the wall behind Erlend. What do you got behind there, man? You got the 2 books. What else do you have?
Got my 2 books. This is okay. So let's start with this one. This is Heidi Klum. This is actually custom ordered by an artist in New York. He actually makes these in about 1 by 2 meter tall pieces of art. But since we were only in New York for a short time, it was complicated to ship it. So I got him to make one that actually just fit my suitcase. But it's basically, the American flag with Heidi Klum, giving the finger, which actually my girlfriend wanted. It's really fun when you meet an artist and you can like custom order stuff. Say, oh, can you just change this? And it's kind of like co-creating, right? So that's a co-created thing. The other one is actually something I found on the street in New York, which somebody had taken out a whole kitchen. And I was walking down the street and I spotted that somebody had actually, done some street art on the kitchen cupboard, and I thought it was really cool. But it's actually the wrong way around. So there's actually a bunny rabbit. This is sort of a quiz we ask people that come visit us. Is like, what do you see in this picture? And there's a lot of people saying different things, but some people say, oh, it's the wrong way around, and then we go, it's an IQ test. But yeah, there's a bunny rabbit and there's a heart. But it's just sometimes you get these things that are just sort of a memory and an experience. And for me, it's like a symbol of, New York and, somebody just creating art out of nothing on the street. So that's kind of what's behind here.
I see it. I have to shift my head like this to see it, but I see the bunny. Yeah. I see the bunny.
We also have a one-way sign from New York up there. The same artist as this one.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
So yeah, this is the New York wall, basically.
I like it. So what inspired you guys to write the book? Like, why now? Why a book? Why this? What's the why behind it?
Okay, so basically, about 1.5 years ago, I started researching private equity companies, venture companies, and I've been in small business for quite a long time, and I've kind of gotten to a place where I've got 50 employees, and there's systems and processes, and I kind of based my first book, Never Work Again, on the whole principle of how to systemize and organize a business so it works without you. But the next question then became, okay, how do you actually grow that to the next level? So how do you kind of go from sort of lifestyle business to performance business? So for me, the question was, okay, how do I actually get the skill set to scale a business into a performance business? So I met Steve and I started to learn about his skill set. and got really fired up about educating other people on the process that he's been doing. So that's from my point of view.
Yeah, when I first met Erlend, I actually met him through reading his book, Never Worked Again, because there was a lot of things in there that were resonating with me, and we talked about what we could do to engage with a lot more people, because I've found over the years that there's only one of me, and I'd love to be engaging with thousands of businesses out there that need help. Clearly, I can't do that because I'm me. So we thought, well, we could write this book, and really properly document the process that I've been using for the last 20 years, and then start to use that book to engage with a much wider audience in lots of different ways. Firstly, obviously through the book and through the book sales, but then through seminars and one-on-one coaching and other things beyond that, which would get the methodology that I use out into the world in a far bigger way.
I love it. And then I see on the title you got 90 days. So if I'm picking up the book and reading through it, am I given specific tasks to do all the way through on day 1, day 2, or like week 1, week 2? How do you break it down, and why 90 days?
Okay, so 90 days.
Well, it's an interesting question.
You go.
There are a lot of people around that would be questioning. You would say, well, you can't possibly turn a business around in 90 days. I can tell you, I'm living proof that you can, because I've done it many times. But if you follow the steps, and it's not always 90 days, sometimes it's a bit more, sometimes it's a bit less, but you can definitely follow the process in the book, the 7 steps, and the 7 steps will take what it takes, depending on what the business is. But if you simply follow those steps in whatever business that you have, you will get a better result. Typically, I think that you could put a business onto a new track. If your business is heading towards a dark place where it's losing money and it's not looking great, you can certainly get a business onto a new track very easily in 90 days to a place where it's heading towards profit and a far brighter future with growth plans, etc. It's very achievable. So yeah, if you follow the book, it's written in a novel style. It's got lots of strong characters in there, and there's a very good, I think, storyline. If you follow that and you associate with the characters, you'll learn it as you go. But it's learning through a novel, very similar to a book called The Goal, which I read back in the 80s. It's written with a strong character, so because people like to read stories.
So we follow the main character, Ralph Hill, sort of transitioning from being an employee to being a consultant. He meets his mentor at a petrol station, and the mentor is doing really well, driving a nice car, nicely dressed, and Ralph asks him, Sam, what do you do? And he says, oh, well, I'm a turnaround consultant. And Ralph goes, oh, how did you become one? And then the story sort of unravels from there, which ends up Ralph Hill working in Milliken Automotive, who just recently launched, the latest electrical car. They've sold lots of them, but they're having problems with demand. Hence, Model 3 and Tesla, and the notorious entrepreneur in the book is called Leon Musket. And he's got lots of different twerks. He's like drinking green smoothies. He's got a walking desk. He does 7-minute workout sessions, walking meetings, does meditation, all these things. So we've really taken the goal and made it a sort of 2017 book. So that's kind of the storyline. And of course, he turns the business around in less than 90 days. He's on TV, and this is a great end to it all as well. So that's the storyline.
Cool. Another question coming in. What would you say is the most important or highest leverage step?
I would always say it's step number 1.
Yeah.
I've been asked this question, absolutely, hundreds of times. It's very, very easy when you go into a business to start fixing things. Yeah, whether it's your own business or you're going in as a consultant, there are always lots and lots of things to fix, and it's very easy just to start fixing things. If you don't narrow your focus, the impact of what you're fixing will not be felt, because you're not fixing the one thing that is making the difference. So in my view, step 1 is always the one that you should get right and spend the most time on. You have to identify the one thing that you're going to fix, and then focus on that thereafter,
until it's resolved. And by that, if you do that, if you narrow your focus, you can have a massive impact in a very short time.
So for books like this, I'm curious what your feedback is, because they have to read the book, but then they have to apply the knowledge and come back to the book, come back to the story. Do you recommend people reading the whole thing through and then coming back to P problems and start figuring it out? Or do you recommend them, okay, step one, this is what I'm doing, and I use it as a workbook? You know what I'm saying? Like, do you go all the way through and then come back individually, or you just like stop reading, I'm going to fix this problem, then I'm going to go to the next step? What do you guys recommend?
Oh, that's a good one. Actually, in the book, the hero, if you like, Ralph, he doesn't know what the next step is. He is literally following along with Sam, his mentor, step by step, and he doesn't know what step 2 is, and he's actually working his way through step 1. Step 2 is until he goes to the next step, the next training session with Sam, and that clearly works very well for him, and it keeps his mind clear. So I guess you could do it both ways. If you simply wanted to follow the steps along, you've got a really urgent issue in your business, you can start with step number 1 and just follow the process. Yeah, and when you're ready, when you've got step number 1 really bottomed out, you can then go to step number 2. I think that would work just fine. I think it would keep your focus very, very sharp and very clear. Other people might look at it differently. They might want to read the whole book all the way through and then come back and start with step 1, because it makes sense to them. They can put the whole thing together. I guess it's different strokes for different folks.
Got it. Steph writing in, where can we find it? On Amazon? Where else? Where can people pick this up?
It's only on Amazon. We want the Amazon benefits of only selling there. So we only have it on Amazon.
And is it up now, or are you guys in pre-sales right now?
No, it's up. We did 12,500 copies so far. So we've done a lot of copies.
Got it. So go check it out, Steph. 90 Days to Profit on Amazon. Next question coming in from J Rise. It's less common for business books to have a character and a story. Why did you choose this method?
So if you look at the sort of best-selling business books, like Rich Dad Poor Dad, they are based on a story. And the reason why so many people, remember the story from Rich Dad Poor Dad and can relate that to other people, with the cash flow quadrant and real estate investing, etc., is because it is a made-up story. Robert Kiyosaki, that's not his life. That's actually a made-up story. It's how we learn. Storytelling is the way to remember and teach other people something. So, in ancient times, we sat around the campfire and we told each other stories, and that's how we could remember them and tell them on to our children and other people. So, it's just a much more entertaining way to do it. It doesn't have to be done that way. But if you look at the best-selling books, that's a lot of them have done it that way.
Why don't you think more? It's a good question from J Rise. Most business books don't have stories, and if it's a great way to learn, why don't you guys think more people apply that into their books?
I have no idea. I think maybe it's viewed as unserious. Maybe it's not business enough. Maybe it's too playful. But I'm not sure. But I think it's a really important thing. I mean, 4 Hour Work Week has a lot of stories. I think every chapter there is a story about Tim Ferriss doing something or other. I'm not sure. Steve, what's your thought?
Yeah, I think if you look at the people that write business books, they're quite a different breed. They typically fall into a couple of camps. They're either consultants that want to write a book, or they're academics who would be experts in this topic. And a lot of those people are not really creative types. They know the subject very well. They're very serious people, and they want to get a serious message across to what they would consider to be their target audience. They're not necessarily thinking about entertaining people. But we came at it from that angle because Erlend and I both agree that when you're telling even quite a dry subject through an entertaining medium, it becomes much more easy to digest and for people to take it in a good way. So we chose that as our way of doing it. It's certainly not everybody's way, but I think I would certainly say that if you're learning something through the medium of a story, it's far better than just like a dry textbook. It's much more user friendly.
I would say another thing as well. If you think about when people actually read books, so you go to work, you're working, maybe you go to the gym, and then maybe you have like 30 minutes in the evening to read something. If it's not entertaining, and if it's dry and boring and it puts you to sleep, it could be a good thing if you want to sleep, right? If to read a boring book to sleep. But if you want to get people hooked and follow through on reading the entire book, then it needs to be entertaining. Or else people just put it down and move on to the next one. I mean, there's how many books are there now? There's millions and millions of books, right? So why should people keep on reading yours? Well, if it's not entertaining you and giving you value, then you'll put on the TV instead.
While we're on the story theme, I'm wondering, so since the book has been out, you've already sold 8,000 copies or whatever you said. Congratulations on that. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Are there any stories that have come back from people who've read it and applied it to their companies and seen some success from it?
We're getting emails from people asking questions, but we haven't. So we launched it last Tuesday, so it's still quite fresh. But we've gotten quite a lot of good reviews on Amazon, with people saying, "I think this will work for our business." But we haven't gotten back any sort of concrete case studies with "Thank you so much for this saved my life" kind of thing.
It hasn't been 90 days yet.
It hasn't been 90 days.
What's one of the most common questions that you get asked from people who've like, what's a follow-up question? People who've read the book or they've got it and then they write in with an email. What kind of questions are you getting?
It's, will this work for this type of business? My business is XYZ. Do you think it'll work for me? That's typically the question.
Right. And Steve basically said, as long as it's a process that'll help improve whatever process there is.
Yeah, people and process.
The only two requirements, and it's people and process. If you've got those two things in your business, I think that you can virtually apply it anywhere. Over the years, I've described what I do to lots of different people in lots of different industries, whether it be retail, insurance, banking, whatever. I mean, I'm from the manufacturing sector. I know it inside out, but there are lots of other sectors out there. And I've spoken to lots of different people in those different sectors, and they all say without exception, "Wow, this is fantastic. I can use this in my industry. I can use this in my company." So I think it's pretty transferable and it's pretty scalable.
Can I ask a question, Steve? So how many times when you've been applying the process have you actually gone back and started at maybe like always for opportunities? How many times have you actually like gone back and done step 4 when you've been at step 6? So let's say step 6 isn't working out and you can't figure out. Have you ever gone back and started again?
To be honest, no, I haven't. That's not to say that we don't change things, because there is the tracking element of the process, which allows you to change things. The feedback you're getting from the tracking, you can then modify the rollout to suit whatever that feedback is. So I don't ever go back and second guess myself. Have I started to solve the right problem? Because it's always done by consensus and agreement with the team. So I never actually get back to the beginning again, but I can quite often get to a point where I'm tweaking and changing to suit the feedback that I'm getting.
Got it. Well, guys, it's crazy how quickly 3 minutes flies by. Thank you for the love. For those of you watching, go check out.
By the way,
what's that?
Congrats on the book, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, mine's here. Steve, you got to put the book in your background somewhere to match for future videos. Everybody's got a book somewhere. Get that product placement going. The headband. Yeah. Guys, check out 90 Days to Profit on Amazon. I'm assuming there's a Kindle and a paperback or hardcover version.
That's right.
Both are versions.
Yes.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate the time. Much love. Continue to believe, and we'll see you soon.
Will do. Thank you.
Thanks, Evan. It's been a blast.